Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the Young Professional Forum, Emerging Skills for Heritage Conservation Proceedings Presentation. This event is organized by the Center for Conservation and Restoration La Venaria Reale, which is, as we all know, a leading organization in Italy and at the international stage on conserving and restoring cultural heritage. I'm honored, first of all, to be again once more with you all for this very significant event. We are all living an era facing profound change in our society, in our environment, in the use of technology. All these changes are affecting our daily life. And of course, they are concerning our profession as well, and cultural professions in all their diverse expression. So, including, of course, the restorer profession, which by definition is already in facing many complex issues, much beyond the scientific ones. So with this aim and to face these important changes, it was dedicated the first edition of the Young Professional Forum, which was held in July 2020, a few months ago, as we all probably record. So today we are presenting the results and the proceedings of that work and of that event. I leave the floor for an address to Sara Abram, Secretary General of the Center.
Hello, and welcome to all of you. I am very happy to meet you again today, 6 months after our first meeting. I also refer you the greetings from our President, Stefano Trucco, who cannot be with us today. So I take this opportunity to thank once again the institutions that support this initiative, especially the Compagnia di San Paolo Foundation, which supports our strategic plan. Thanks to the strategic plan, we have developed a program dedicated to international relations, and we have conceived the forum. I'd like to thank the Magneto Foundation too. With their contribution, we were able to reward the 4 best contributions of the 2020 edition: Camila, Alexandra, Amarilli, and Elton. I am very curious to hear directly from you how much your projects and researches have grown so far. The publication of the proceedings of the first edition of the forum, which we are presenting today, is an important milestone for us. Thanks to the Sagiya Publishing House for achieving this result, together with all the staff of the Centro Conservazione e Restauro involved. The publication of the proceedings is a way to express and make your work and your point of view well known. But it is also a significant mirror of the topics that interest you and the tools with which you are facing your professional growth. From here, we want to start to analyze and support emerging skills in the conservation of cultural heritage. We believe that young professionals need their own space, a space where they are able to express their potential, to share expectations and difficulties, to find visibility, support, and the opportunity to grow and discuss. With the Young Professionals Forum and what we are developing around it, we would like to contribute to the creation of this space. Thank you for your participation, contributions, and suggestions. But above all, thank you for your presence. I'm sure that all together we will build something powerful. Good afternoon and good work.
Thanks a lot, Sara, for addressing this event today. So we officially opened the works. It was indeed a great, a big event. It was online because of the reasons that we all perfectly know. But let me recap a few numbers of the 2nd of July event. More than 200 people applied to the Young Professional Forum from almost 60 different countries, from the Philippines, India, China, crossing Europe, so Greece and Italy, of course, and Germany, going to Cuba, Argentina, Chile, and yes, not to forget the African countries like South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, just to mention some, and the Arab as well. I remember the Emirates and Qatar and Syria. So, of course, I'm not going to mention all of them, but to give you the feeling, the sense of how large was the reaction, the feedback is to this event. I see, I'm listening some noise. Okay, please switch, please mute. Thank you. Okay, sorry. So let's present the proceedings now. So this is the program of today. We officially opened. We are going to present the proceedings, and we are going to give finally voice to the 4 awarded persons, 1 per topic. Let me remember the 4 topics to which participants could apply. The first one was on conservation ethics and practice. The second one was on diagnostic and technologies applied to conservation. The third about museum professions, and the fourth on the history of conservation. It's important to recall these 4 topics because, okay, you will understand why, but we are keeping these 4 topics also for the following editions. The proceedings, it's a pretty consistent volume made of like 199 to be precise pages, and it's very rich. It's very rich in terms of contents, in terms of details, in terms of diversity of approaches. So in these slides you can see just the summary of what you will find by scrolling, by reading. I invite all of you to read this document. This document is uploaded on the website of the Venaria Conservation Center. So you can, it's open, you can download it. You can go through also directly from the website. You can consult it directly. The report includes a number of texts, not just by the winners, but by all the selected participants. I didn't say, but 24 different abstracts were selected and were evaluated. You are going to find all this material with very nice pictures in high resolution. You can also zoom, click on them, zoom of them, and enter in as to enter in a very real virtual but kind of realistic environment. So it's a very nice document, and I invite you all to take a look and to make a good use of it. Well, now let's start the presentation. We have online the 4 awarded persons. We also have online the scientific committee who took part in the evaluation of all the papers that were received. Let me recall them because they did a huge work. 8 international level experts. I'm recalling them starting from Sara Abram, of course, you just saw her, Michela Cardinali, Stefania De Blasi, Lorenzo Apollonia, Costanza Miliani, Sara Stenage, Alberto Garlandini, and Maria Beatrice Failla. They are all following the works today, and they are ready to comment eventually. The first to present is related to the conservation ethics and practices topic. His name is Munyaradzi Elton Sagiya from Africa, from Zimbabwe, presenting his work on indigenous knowledge, skills and practices in conserving the Great Zimbabwe World Heritage Site. We have a recorded testimony from him. Please, let's move with the record.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present my ongoing research project. The thrust of my project is to examine and document the indigenous knowledge, skills and practices of conserving the dry stone walls at Great Zimbabwe, a World Heritage Site located in southern Zimbabwe. I grew up among the Nemanwa clan, one of the heritage communities settled around Great Zimbabwe. I am also a curator at this site that is administered by the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe, a government department falling under the Ministry of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage. Over the years, I've observed the practical and theoretical privileging of Western science and knowledge in restoring and conserving the dry stone walls at Great Zimbabwe. The government of Zimbabwe has on several occasions outsourced international conservators from countries such as Britain, France, Italy, to come and assist the conservation team at Great Zimbabwe in the restoration and conservation of the dry stone walls. However, this approach has been viewed differently amongst the local communities. When I was carrying out my desktop study, I came across a letter that was addressed to the editor of the Herald, one of the daily newspapers in the country, and it reads, "We are very concerned at the state of affairs at Great Zimbabwe. The decision by the country, by the government, to engage the French to rebuild the ruins is stupid and ill-advised. They should have consulted the elders of the area, but were treated like outsiders. I understand that one wall which they built with cement collapsed, showing the supernatural powers of the spirits. We must follow our tradition if we want to prevent the wall collapse." So this is part of the letter that I came across while carrying out desktop survey for this project. And it is against this background that I've developed an interest of investigating the role of indigenous knowledge, skills and practices in the conservation of the dry stone walls, not only at Great Zimbabwe, but at other similar sites that are found in Zimbabwe and in the neighboring countries of Botswana, Mozambique, and South Africa. So for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with Great Zimbabwe, I will just present a brief outline of the site and its conservation history. In terms of architecture, Great Zimbabwe has been categorized into 3 major zones: the hill complex, valley enclosures, and the great enclosure. And constituting these three major components are the dry stone walls that were built without use of mortar or any binding material. And the size of these walls ranges between, in terms of height, ranges between 1 meter and 11 meters. With regards to the width, it's between 1 meter and 6 meters. So that's the EU complex, the first zone to be built at the site. The great enclosure, the last structure to be built at Great Zimbabwe. However, Great Zimbabwe is not only about the material heritage. It's not only about the dry stone walls. It is also a place that is revered by the local communities, even the nation at large. And I've witnessed a number of groups coming to the site to carry out rituals and other spiritual ceremonies. And with regards to the conservation of the site, there's been an assumption in Africa that conservation of built heritage was introduced by the Europeans in the late 19th century, but this has been dismissed based on evidence that had been recovered at places such as Great Zimbabwe, where there is evidence of restoration and repair during the occupation period. And also after the occupation of the Great Zimbabwe by the original builders, the site was occupied by two different clans. At first, it was the Nemanwa, then later the Mugabe clans. And these clans have been looking after the site as traditional custodians, screening the visitors, and also regulating the do's and the don'ts within this site. And that was on its own a form of conservation and management practice prior to the colonial era, spanning from 1890 to 1980. The Western ways of conserving Great Zimbabwe were then introduced around 1902, when the first curator, Richard Nicklin Hall, was appointed by the British South Africa Company. Hall worked at Great Zimbabwe up to 1904, when he was dismissed due to misguided diggings that he was carrying out at the site, which then later on attracted a public outcry. 1909, a surveyor was contracted to carry out a condition assessment of the site. He came up with a number of recommendations, and one of the recommendations was to appoint a site curator, a custodian who would carry out the day-to-day conservation of the site. And this person was St. Clair Wallace, who worked at Great Zimbabwe from 1911 to 1948. He embarked on a number of major restoration work at Great Zimbabwe. And between 1950s to the late 1970s, there were very limited conservation work at Great Zimbabwe. Understandably, from 1960s to around the 1970s, the country was involved in a liberation struggle for independence. So it was a period that was very difficult for field research as well as conservation work. 1980, that's when the country was attained its political independence, and it was also a turning point in terms of the conservation work at Great Zimbabwe. The country was renamed Zimbabwe after the site, and prior to that, the country was known as Southern Rhodesia. And in 1982, the independent country ratified the 1972 World Heritage Convention. And as a result, the site received quite a number of visits and assessments from experts from UNESCO, ICOM, ICOMOS, among other institutions. And this led to the adoption of international conservation guidelines and practices. And in 1986, Great Zimbabwe was enlisted on the World Heritage List. And the stonemasons who had been working with curators such as Wallace in the restoration and conservation of Great Zimbabwe were now obliged to operate within both the national and international conservation practices, regardless of their experiences and maybe different opinions. And the conservation of dry stone walls became a highly academic science that was deemed not comprehended by those not formally educated. And just another background to those who may not also be familiar with structural issues with the, facing the dry stone walls. Here are some of the highlights pertaining to structural problems, where in some cases, these structural problems emanate from the construction techniques, where there are certain weaknesses that are embedded in this dry stone walling architecture. And as a result, the wall might develop a bulge, a split that will result in a collapse or other structural problems. So it is against this background that my work has been interested in understanding the contribution of indigenous knowledge systems in the conservation of Great Zimbabwe. And by definition, indigenous knowledge simply refers to the local knowledge gained from past experience or events which constitute the community's cultural practices and tradition. And in Zimbabwe, stonemasonry is a skill and a profession that is embedded in traditional knowledge systems. Currently, there are no formal institutions that train stonemasons, but this skill has been inherited from the ancestral builders of the ancient dry stone built settlements. And Mark Gibbon has actually argued that the mastering of stonemasonry is undertaken through an apprentice approach, because he regarded this profession as not possible to teach from a book. Amongst the local communities at Great Zimbabwe, there are skilled and experienced stonemasons that have been engaged by the National Museums and Museums of Zimbabwe in restoring and conserving Great Zimbabwe. These stonemasons, some are employed on permanent basis, some are on part-time basis, depending with the work that needs to be done. And as part of this project, I've been interviewing and discussing with the serving and retired stonemasons at Great Zimbabwe to understand their knowledge and practice of conserving the dry stone walls. And one aspect that I've emerged is the spirituality of the conservation of dry stone walls. And amongst the local communities, when I was carrying out some interviews, one elder told me that walls do not just collapse. And when they do, something will not be right within the ancestral world. So he was telling me that there are instances, there are cases whereby before any intervention has been done on a collapse or a problematic structure, the elders or whoever is responsible is supposed to consult the ancestral spirits. And depending on the results of that consultation, rituals or ceremonies can be undertaken prior to any intervention work. So this is some of the findings that I got from my ongoing research. So in addition to that knowledge, the local people, the traditional stonemasons, have also mastered the technical aspects of restoring the dry stone walls. For example, they've gained experience in carrying out wall monitoring, as well as carrying out systematic dismantling of problematic walls, whereby they'll be eliminating structural problems, as well as carrying out restorations. So on this slide, it was in 2016 when the conical tower within the great enclosure had developed a bulge. And this is where we see the stone masons intervening. That photograph, it was during the restoration of the western entrance at the great enclosure. And again, the stone masons rendered their practical experience and skills in restoring that entrance. Again, recently in 2017, the stone masons were involved in the restoration of the terrace wall number 55 in the Hill complex. So these are some of the contributions, the work that the stone masons have been undertaking at Great Zimbabwe. But surprisingly, their voices is silent in the ever-expanding conservation literature on Great Zimbabwe. And this has been one of my major concerns in my project, where I'm documenting their skills, their knowledge, as well as their experiences. So as a way of concluding my presentation, I consider Great Zimbabwe as a meeting place of two different ethical positions, one informed by international conservation practices, and the other informed by indigenous knowledge systems. And I argue, as a way of concluding, that the educated curators, surveyors, and intellectuals have imposed their voices on the traditional and uneducated, in quotes, stone masons, and the silent voices of stone masons in the conservation academic literature of Great Zimbabwe revolve around power differentials between curators and stone masons. It is power politics of the people who are formally educated and those that have traditional knowledge. So with the Young Professionals Forum award that I won, I've worked on an audio-visual story about the contribution of the stone masons in the conservation of dry stone walls at Great Zimbabwe. This audio-visual story is almost complete. I'm just carrying out some final touches, but I intend to upload this story on a number of different online platforms to raise awareness of the significance of the indigenous knowledge, skills, and practices in the conservation of built heritage in Zimbabwe and beyond. And I'm very grateful to have won this award. I also wish to express my gratitude to the Center Foundation for the Conservation and Restoration of Cultural Heritage, the Young Professional Forum team, sponsors and partners of the first edition of the online Young Professional Forums International event. I also wish to express my gratitude to the retired and serving stone masons at Great Zimbabwe, to my PhD supervisor, Professor Pwiti, as well as my employer, the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Elton. It's this site. I know a little bit about this site. I had in the past a student working on the Great Zimbabwe water site, so I know it's really an amazing case, rich in history, of conservation, as you partially shown, and thank you. Let me say thank you also for recalling all of us on how restoration is really going much beyond the scientific paradigms, which are, of course, crucial and extremely important, but in your case, it is very, very clear how there is much more than this. Traditional values, indigenous values, community values, and I'm personally, if I may say, very happy that you, let's say, an African representative from an African country, have access to this award, and because we all know how Africa is and will be crucial in what we call future sustainability of our planet, also thanks to investing in cultural heritage. I didn't say it before, but this gives me the occasion to remember that each of the awarded candidates received a grant, 1,000 euros. And in your case, we are very, very pleased to see that you already started working in this audiovisual story and presenting it through the media, which is extremely important. Let me remember also that you can use the chat for posing questions. We will have a little session, if we have time, also at the end of this presentation to reply, posing questions to the presenters and to the scientific committee as well. Thanks again, Elton. And let's move now to the second awarded person and proposal on the second session, which was the one on diagnostic and technology supply to conservation. Amarilli Rava from UK presented a work on adhesion intervention on paint layers, correlating viscosity and surface tension to adhesive penetration and deposition, which was the winner of the second session. So yes, we are shifting to science, to hard science now. So Amarilli, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessio, and thank you everyone for being here today. I just wanted to say that I'm a practical conservator, and it's quite funny that you call it hard science, because this is something that I got into quite late. Well, not quite late, but just as a second step in my career. So just to say that. But I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation. So today I will be presenting part of my doctoral research on the assessment of adhesion interventions on wall paintings. The project is undertaken at the Courtauld Institute of Art and University College London and supervised by Professors Aviva Bernstock and Emma Richardson. As the title suggests, the research is correlating rheological properties and surface tension of selected adhesives to their deposition between paint and plaster. Results show how material characteristics have a significant impact on migration of the solutions and ultimately deposition in and between the substrates. Just a little bit of background, but flaking or failure of adhesion in the last layers of a painted scheme is a widespread deterioration phenomenon which conservators have to face on a regular basis. The final layers of the stratigraphy, constituted of paint and preparatory layers, are arguably the most precious and the most vulnerable, as they stand at the interface between the structure and the external environment. And here we can see some flaking paint of the wall paintings on the Bundi Palace complex in India, dating to the second half of the 18th century. The extreme deterioration is leading to loss of the paint layers. Commonly, failure of adhesion is addressed by adding a new material, the adhesive, which is can be injected between the lifted layers and the support. And here we see an example where a micrograph where we can actually distinguish the adhesive between what are the paint layers and the plaster underneath. Assessment of this conservation treatment presents numerous challenges, especially due to its concealed nature. We can confidently say, however, that in order for the bond to be successful, the adhesive should conform to the substrate and be deposited at the interface between the lifted layers. Two adhesives commonly used in conservation, a high bloom type B gelatin and Junfunori, were selected for the study and evaluated at different concentrations. So the gelatin was evaluated at 1, 3, and 5%, and Junfunori at 0.5 and 1% concentration. The material characteristics were observed and correlated to penetration and deposition in the stratigraphy. This was done by observing the migration of the solution and evaporation of the volatile component, which in this case is water for both adhesives. And that was carried out through unilateral NMR and deposition through fluorochrome tagging. To reduce variables, the performance of the adhesive was evaluated on replicas mimicking a simple wall painting stratigraphy. The plaster is a standard 1-to-3 lime and sand mixture, whilst the iron oxide paint is bound with egg yolk. The plaster wafers are about 3 millimeters thick, with the paint released on an area at the center of approximately 6.5 centimeter square. The samples were naturally aged at ambient condition for 9 months before treatment. The adhesives are applied by injecting 0.1 milliliter of adhesive at 26 degrees Celsius behind the lifted paint layer. To encourage adhesion, the paint was gently pressed back with a cotton ball wrapped in a non-woven tissue through another layer of tissue acting as a release layer. Viscosity and gel point of the adhesives were measured at different temperatures. Here we see the gelatin solutions, which were all analyzed at 3 different temperatures. All gelatin solutions showed a Newtonian behavior when analyzed at 30 degrees, where the viscosity is independent of shear rate. As we can see here, we have a no change in the viscosity of the materials when analyzed at 30 degrees as a function of shear rate. Considering that the viscosity of water at 20 degrees is equal to 1 millipascal, all gelatin solutions showed a more viscous behavior, with viscosities not exceeding 10 millipascal, increasing with concentration. So we can see that 1%, 3%, and 5%, we have an increase in viscosity, which is constant at 30 degrees. At temperatures close to their gel point, gelatin solutions lose their Newtonian behavior, with viscosity becoming affected by shear rate. As we can see, we don't have straight lines anymore at the other 2 temperatures. All concentrations show a drop in viscosity with the increase in shear rate, as we can see here, which is a characteristic of pseudoplastic or shear thinning fluids. Viscosity are generally increasing with increasing concentration with the 3 and 5% solution, however, showing very similar properties. Moving on to the Junfunori. Although the material forms a viscous liquid, due to the molecular structure, it doesn't develop a semi-rigid gel like gelatin does. The polysaccharide solutions were therefore characterized exclusively for their viscosity. Both solutions showed a decrease in viscosity with increase in temperature. So we can see that we have an increase in viscosity with decrease in temperature. I'm sorry, this number is moved around a little bit. A slight decrease in viscosity is observed when with an increase in shear rate. So we can see that the lines are sloping slightly with an increase in shear rate. This can be interpreted again as a shear thinning behavior, and the results showed how Junfunori solutions have higher viscosities than gelatin at the same concentration, temperature, and shear rate. Moving on to surface tension, we can observe that when compared to water, most adhesive solutions show a decrease in surface tension. This characteristic enhances their wetting and spreading ability, ensuring good contact and resulting, hopefully, in good adhesion. Generally, the increasing concentration results in lowering the surface tension, with the exception of the 3% gelatin solution untagged that we can see here. So here is also the difference between the tagged and untagged solutions. To provide effective visualization, the two adhesives were tagged with fluorescent dyes. By bonding onto functional groups of the materials and thanks to their strong clean fluorescence, the fluorochromes allow for clear identification of the adhesive deposition when observed in section. Gelatin was tagged with the amino-reactive 5,6 carboxyfluorescent succinylmethyl ester, or easily 5,6-FAME-C, while Junfanori was tagged with dichlorothiazinyl aminofluorescin, or DTAF, able to bind onto hydroxyl group of the polysaccharide. So here, although section showed only a discrete slice in each of the three mock-ups, it is immediately evident how the concentration and changes in material characteristic affect the deposition. Samples treated with 1% gelatin show a distinct fluorescence throughout the stratigraphy in areas reaching the full 3 millimeter in the plaster. Here we can see the fluorescence all through the 3 millimeters of the plaster. The deposition is not uniform, and small amounts of material are left at the interface between the paint and the plaster. 2 of the 3 samples treated with 3% tagged gelatin show the adhesive deposited at the interface between the paint and plaster. However, the gelatin is present through the plaster in 2 locations of a sample treated with 3%. So we can see that here the adhesive is spread through the 3 millimeter of the thickness of the plaster. Samples treated with 5% gelatin are consistent, showing circumscribed deposition between paint and plaster. And the thin sections, as you can see here, show glue lines and bridging between the 2 substrates. Samples treated with tagged Junfanori showed less intense fluorescence due to the smaller amount of adhesive applied, especially when used at the 0.5 concentration. The material is identifiable in all samples at the interface between the paint and plaster layers, with samples treated with 1% showing glue lines and bridging, as we can see here in the thin section. So we can see the adhesive clearly visible just below the paint layer. Penetration of the adhesive system and evaporation of the solvent was observed with unilateral NMR relaxometry. NMR mouse is a non-invasive, non-contact technique that relies on the magnetization from a single-sided magnet, creating a sensitive area external to the device. Here we can see the instrument with the magnet, which is placed on a precision lift, allowing to gather a profile over a given depth. As we can see in the schematic, the instrument relies on an inhomogeneous field above the magnet with a sensitive slice in the region of 50 micrometers, dependent on the acquisition parameters. For each sample, a profile was gathered before and 24 hours after application. The graphs show the profile of the sample, here before application and here after. This is an example of the 5% gelatin adhesive. Where we see in the profile that the plaster is transparent to the technique, and the signal determines the location of the paint and adhesive after 24 hours after application. Dynamic analysis was undertaken immediately after injection, with 10 experiments run over 80 minutes to gather data on movement of moisture and adhesive in the stratigraphy. So we can see here, this is a graph representing the dynamic experiment. We have 12 experiments. The 1 is before and 12 is 24 hours after, and 2 to 11 are the 10 consecutive experiments over 80 minutes. The graph shows the maximum amplitude echo for each experiment and is plotted against experiment number. A detailed relaxation curve was gathered for the maximum slice. So here you can see the maximum slice in, the maximum amplitude slice in the sample. And for that slice, a complete relaxation curve was gathered. And that was acquired before and after treatment to observe possible changes in the material properties of the paint after treatment. Looking at the data gathered with unilateral NMR, we can see that the instrument is successful at determining the movement of the adhesive system. Here we see only one of the representative replicate, which were 5, analyzed for each concentration. The adhesive solutions were readily detected, with an increase in concentration resulting in a signal increase, and the 5% gelatin showing highest amplitude. All adhesives displayed reverse migration and tendency to dry from the upper surface, so from the paint surface. The moisture migration in the paint appears in most samples, so we have the paint absorbing part of the moisture. However, paint swelling was only observed for gelatin solutions, becoming more pronounced with the increased in concentration. 2 instances of paint swelling were observed for the adhesives at 1% concentration, 3 for the 3%, and all 5 samples for the 5%. This may be related to the changes in rheological properties of the gelatin, acting as a moisture reservoir upon thickening and gelling. No paint swelling was observed for the Junfunori. Instrument limitations and low signal precluded precise measurements of the depth of penetration. However, all adhesives had lost their volatile component 24 hours after the injection. Most samples showed reduced signal and area after adhesion, ascribing to the flattening of the paint layer. So we can see here that we have a smaller area and also a peak shift in the after, which can be interpreted as the adhesive providing better adhesion. So the paint layer is flattened and therefore we have a smaller area and a stronger peak, whilst before we had a flake, so that had a larger area. And so in conclusion, the deposition can be directly correlated with changes in the rheological properties of the materials. So materials showing higher viscosities resulted in less penetration, with adhesives deposited at the interface between paint and plaster. No clear differences were observed in material conformance resulting from wetting. However, it can be assumed that all materials have good wetting properties due to their lowering surface tension effects. Gelling properties limit penetration, but can provide a moisture reservoir leading to swelling of the paint layers. And paint layers are consistently flattened onto the plaster support when adhered with gelatin at 5% concentration. As shown, rheological behavior is affecting the penetration and the deposition of the adhesives, and that can be manipulated through changes in concentration and temperature of the adhesive. So this is my presentation, and I would like to thank the Centro di Conservazione Restauro Veneria, all the Young Professional Forum staff, and my supervisors for the support throughout my research. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amarilli. It's us actually thanking you for your interest in this program, for applying to it, and for showing some of your experiments, which are showing a really relevant scientific and solid scientific approach. We have 1 minute more, and let me ask, because we received some questions and collected some curiosity about this technique, like the NMR mouse, which I'm reading is a quite unconventional and an uncommon technique in conservation science. So in your experience, ongoing experience, the question is, what are the potential limits that you are learning in applying it to your research, especially in the re-adhesion methods? And if I may add, another question is, how are you developing your project thanks to the prize that you got from the forum?
Thank you, Alessio. Yes, the NMR mouse is an interesting technique and it's not very commonly used. As I said, I'm a practical conservator, and therefore for me it's been quite a steep learning curve. But the technique has great advantages. As I mentioned, it's not only a non-invasive technique, but also is non-contact. And so it allows to analyze surfaces without touching the surfaces. And part of my research was to provide a case study where the analytical protocol could be applied. And one of the case study was the wall paintings in the baptistry of St. Mary Undercroft at the Houses of Parliament, which is affected by a problem of flaking paint layers. The paint layers are highly delaminated and flaking off, so they're very deformed as well. And thanks to the characteristic of this technique, which is non-contact, I was able to gather profiles before adhesion as well, to then correlate with the profile after re-adhesion of the paint layer onto the support. So you can imagine that if I had to touch a brittle surface with a machine, I would have crushed those flakes. But the NMR mouse allowed that non-contact analysis that I was looking for. And so that is very much unique. And also the dynamic analysis is something that I was able to gather profiles over a given time. There are, of course, compromises that one has to make in terms of acquisition time. And of course, the longer the analysis, the more clear the results can be. However, the dynamic analysis, I had to compromise on the acquisition time to be able to fit it in the movement, in the time where the adhesive was moving in the stratigraphy. And so my data in that case was particularly noisy. And that raises one of the drawbacks of the analytical technique is interpretation between actual signal and noise. And so what was highlighted in my study was also that in some instances we were not able to detect the actual solutions because of the limits of detections of the technique within those specific parameters. So yes, this is
Thank you, Amarilli. In 10 seconds, how are you taking benefit from the prize that you got?
Yes, and again, as a practical conservator, I think that it is very important for results that come from scientific research to be made available to the public in an accessible manner, so that they can benefit the conservation practice. And so this is only a section of my PhD, and I think, well, what is for me useful and interesting data about the response of the adhesives to fluctuations in relative humidity. And I intend, although I'm still in the process of writing up my results, but I intend to use the prize to invest in publication, in publishing my data, so that could be made accessible to the wider public.
Great, thank you, Amarilli. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much, everyone.
It's so important to provide evidence of the results, and as you said, to continue on research and in finding the right compromise to go on with such a complex issues like the one restoration of cultural heritage are posing. Thanks again, and let's move to the third awarded person. We are very pleased to have also a person from Brazil. So we move across the globe from Rio de Janeiro, actually, and Camila Silveira de Pinho is presenting her work, which is very attached to the current times, to the emergency of COVID-19, and to a very crucial sector talking about heritage conservation, which is of course related to museums and museum profession. So Camila, please, the floor is yours.
You hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Is it working? Yeah.
Yes.
So, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am the museology coordinator from the Museu de Arte Moderna de Rio de Janeiro. There is a modern art museum in one of the most important art museums in Latin America. I studied museology, art history, and art expertise in Brazil. And in 2017, I did a master in restoration and conservation in Palazzo Spinelli in Florence, Italy. I would like to say there is an honor to be here and to be one of the winners presenting the process of such an important document for the field of conservation in the context of COVID-19. I'm here to present a guideline document for the COVID-19 pandemic period published by ICOM Brazil in the beginning of April, named as ICOM Brazil recommendation in front of to COVID-19. Okay, here we have the scenario of the beginning of the pandemic. It's still in March, when 94.7% of the museums around the world was closed. The situation was not different in Brazil. There are more than 3,700 museums, which 80% are small, and the majority do not have specialized conservation teams. This absolutely unprecedented situation showed us the lack of theoretical parameters and specific guidelines, and the museum security and preservation became an object of great concern since March 16th, when Munyaradzi closed, and the major of the team was working from home, including my department. There is the collection and conservation department. So the first steps for this document began inside of the Munyaradzi collection and conservation department. We decided to contact a few numbers of colleagues from other institutions, even though the initial objective was to find guidelines of instructing the department to apply conservation methodologies in this period. And after this first contact, together with other colleagues from MASP, there is the São Paulo Art Museum and ICOM Brazil, we decided to create a working group with a sequence of virtual meetings to discuss the strategies adopted in our new routine. It is important to say that we had in mind all the time the ICOM Code of Ethics for Museum, thinking about not only the collection conservation, but also the professional safety. Especially, I would like to highlight the article 8.11, Professionals Consulting, that says, it is a professional responsibility to consult other colleagues within or outside the museum when the expertise available in the museum is insufficient to ensure good decision-making. The meetings were composed by more than 70 professionals from cultural institutions, not only museums, but also public heritage institutes, cultural centers, cultural centers and universities, with different functions like museologists, conservators, restorers, producers, researchers, historians, directors, and registers. We prepared a question script that helped us to give our testimony about the adopted plan of action of each institution and in this period of social isolation. Here you can see the question script. I would like to highlight some subjects like the rounds in this period, the staff rotation, if the routine was in this period was discussed with the entire team, including the directors, the actions directly related with the collections conservation, the professional safety in this period, and personal security measure granted by the institutions. We can notice after the meetings a considerable variation of answers with discrepancies between institutions, and in some of the cases, the teams responsible were left alone to make decisions regarding the collection conservation. In the end of the meeting, we decided to create a document together to support the Brazilian cultural institution in this period. The criteria adopted for this document were a collective and democratic writing in a short time framing to achieve homogeneity on how to treat collections and professionals during the period of social isolation, considering all the recommendations of the WHO and the Anvisa. Anvisa is the Brazilian National Health Surveillance Agency, and of course, the short number of international studies that we had. The process was a small group of 4 specialists that was composed by me, by Eric Santos from MASP, by Marília Bonas from ICOM Brazil, and by Yaciara Froner from Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais. We organized the information and the notes, and we produced a document of recommendations. This document was reviewed and approved by the group involved since the beginning. And all the process took only 15 days, and the document was signed by 68 professionals from 33 organizations. You can find the document at this link. And here there are the guidelines, there are 18, but I would like to highlight the guidelines regarding professionals at risk, routine, inspection and work shift planning, security protocols, cleaning management plan, exhibitions, and loans. The document guidelines are feasible and easily applicable to different museums' realities. It is important to remember that we're involved in this process, not only museums, but other cultural institutions. It was possible because of the interdisciplinary skills of the team involved and the strategy adopted. And this process demonstrates the strength of heritage conservation area in Brazil and the importance of collective and interdisciplinary actions in this moment. The document was translated into English and Spanish and disseminated by ICOM, ICOM CC, ICOM Portugal, ICOM Brazil, Abram, Iber Museums, Apoio Online, and other organizations, and later served as a reference for reopened documents from various museums and organizations. I would like to thank all the professionals involved in this project, especially my team, the Adhesion and Conservation Department. I would like to thank all of you, the scientific committee, Sara, Abram, and Alberto Garlandini. Thank the Centro Conservazione e Restauro La Venaria Reale. Thank the Young Professionals Forum staff and the sponsors and partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Camila. It's again, it's really us thanking you in this case and you all for the interest and for the effort that you made. And in your case, for recalling us, all of us, to the importance of awareness raising, this dissemination of practices on how to somehow deal with such an emergency that we are still all facing. And actually we received a question for you related to the emergency, to the COVID-19 new wave of emergency, if we can call it like this. Do you think in your case, in your feeling, in your experience, that there are many maybe other additional critical issues to comply with compared to the previous months? And maybe you want to say something about this. And as I asked also to the previous winners, how are you using, what kind of progress are you making thanks to the participation to the forum and the prize that you received?
Yeah, of course, we have to think now about the second wave, because the first wave, all the Brazilian museums were closed. And now in the second wave, most of them are open. So in my point of view, now we need to focus on the professionals that are not working at home anymore, and how the museums can contribute to their security. So I really would like to use the same methodology to initiate a working group, as I did together with other professionals in the first wave, to prepare a new document considering these arguments. And I am talking already with the ICOM Brazil to think about it, to do this together again. And the second question, as I said in my presentation, this document served as a reference for museums reopened protocols document. This also happened in the museum where I work, and helped us to set standards for the new moment. And in addition, personally, the prize contributed with the new international contacts that I made, such as the SIC group that I met here in the context of the Young Professionals Forum. And we are starting to think about a partnership to create the SIC Brazil.
Wonderful, great. Very good to know about your progress. We have we really have many questions that we can pose to you, but we don't have, unfortunately, time now. But please do go on and do share with us the results of these advancements that you are planning to do, considering also that the president of ICOM International is now following this session. I guess this might be very relevant reciprocally, let's say. Again, thank you, Camila, and congratulations for your prize and for your work. I see that the next presenter is ready already. So let's move to the fourth and last, let's say, presenter, last of the fourth winner of this first edition of the forum, Alexandra Galitskaya from Russia. Won the award for the history of conservation sector. And she is now going to present a work on the birth and development of the scientific restoration from the 18th to the early 20th century in Russia. Alexandra, please tell us about your work.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. Wait a second. That's it. Yes, so my name is Alexandra Galitskaya, and I'm the only winner to represent Italy. And it's a great honor to me, but at the same time, I was very surprised being actually Russian. And I've celebrated my 3rd year in Italy this November. And I'm a master's student at the Sapienza University of Rome. I study art history. So I find it amazing being already a winner of this event of the first edition of the Young Professionals Forum that united on the 2nd of July many high-level specialists with their young colleagues. And it is also important to notice that my project won in the history of conservation session the topic of a great responsibility because it tells other people's stories and transmits their knowledge to future generations. Art is a big part of my life. I've been drawing almost since I was born. hence my professional choice was defined naturally. This is not my first higher education. I graduated from Moscow State University of Printing Arts in 2013. And I'm a professional graphic artist, and I worked both in fine arts and graphic design areas. But as I have always been interested in art history, it was not enough for me. My personal preference is given to the Italian Renaissance art and culture. In 2015, I've started, just by case, studying Italian on my own. 2 years later, I decided to give my new knowledge a try and to restart my academic career by entering a university in Italy. The process of studying abroad enriched me both as a person and a professional. I believe that a combination of my skills of a visual artist with my latest studies in art history may lead to a fruitful result, as I actively take part in the creative process and I know its logic and techniques well enough. The Sapienza is my third alma mater. The first Italian university I had been studying at was the Roma Tre University. There I met the most inspiring teacher I've ever known, Mario Micheli, Associate Professor of History and Technique of Restoration. He supervised my bachelor's thesis and supported me a lot with his strong belief in my professional talents. It was also Professor Micheli to provide me with the idea to participate in the Young Professionals Forum. As you all see, it was a good idea, and it is really precious to meet a good teacher in your life. Studying at the Sapienza in Rome, the largest university in Europe, gives me a chance to explore foreign educational methods and to improve my previous knowledge gained in my home country. This way, I can not only study Italian art in the right place, but I can make my own contribution to the international cultural exchange by sharing Russian art history with the Italians. This international approach characterized a project I made for the Young Professionals Forum. It is dedicated to the process of birth and development of the scientific restoration in Russia, which starts in the 18th century, but assumes its modern form in the 20th century. It is a topic of great interest. However, there are no many recent studies on it in Russia, or there is a lack of related materials even in foreign languages, Italian included. It tells a story of cultural opening of Russia to European cultural influence. Started with Peter the Great's era. Some decades later, in the mid-18th century, with the introduction of the oil painting technique, always from Europe, Russian painters started replacing their temperas with oil paintings, what created a need for their restoration. However, that process was not immediate, as at that time, a restoration method called поновление was frequently used in icons when the old images were refreshed or even completely repainted. So the restoration activity in Russia started to develop under a strong European influence. A German painter, Lucas Conrad Pfanzelt, who arrived to St. Petersburg in 1743, became the first professional restorer at the Hermitage and in all Russia. Already in 1819, Russian restoration showed its independence when Franz Labiensky founded a restoration school at the Hermitage, an innovative project even for Europe of that time, as a restoration school projected in the same year by the Italian restorer Pietro Edwards was never been realized. But a genuine switch to the scientifically based restoration started only around the 20th or the 20th century. Hence, only after the revolution of 1917. Even if that period was tragic for the country and for its cultural institutions, some important innovations were introduced, such as a method elaborated by Rybnikov in 1919 in Moscow, so-called Method Rybnikov, still in use for the painting attribution, and based on the structural analysis of brushstrokes from the photographs taken with the grazing lights. A major contribution to the restoration and conservation field in that difficult period in Russia was made by two restoration commissions, one guided by the famous art historian and painter Igor Grabar, and another curated by the restorer and art historian Count Yuri Alsufiev, together with the philosopher and scientist, priest Pavel Florensky. During the immediate post-revolutionary period, many churches and sacred art pieces were destroyed by the new Soviet authorities. At the same time, the nationalization process made the sacred artworks available to the scientific society for the further studies. It was a paradox of the time, and a careful research of these events is still need to be done. For many of the above-mentioned scientists, the fact of participation in the activity linked with the church turned out fatal. The restoration interventions made by these commissions may be seen as an act of civil courage, as they saved the national cultural heritage. An investigation of the State Tretyakov Gallery's archive in Moscow allowed me to find the relevant information about the interventions of the early 20th century I used in my contribution for the forum. I intend to continue my studies in history of painting conservation, focusing on its interdisciplinary aspects, and to link my upcoming master's project at the Sapienza to this topic. Due to the present coronavirus situation, I stayed in Russia for 5 months. And thanks to the Forum's prize I was awarded with, I finally came back to Italy. Here in Italy, I'm continuing to develop my project, as the contribution I wrote for the forum represents only one part of a much bigger work. At the moment, I'm drafting an article for another publication in Italian about more specific case studies of restoration interventions made in the early 20th century in Russia. For me, the Forum Award was a valuable support to keep on developing my project and future plans. During the forum, I met the international colleagues online, and I felt myself a part of a scientific community, which is especially precious in the current days of isolation. And let's say it helped to broaden my personal understanding of art history, the subject I'm really passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you for presenting this, and also thank you for telling us how you are moving on your work, on your research, on your studies related. We have a curiosity. It is about what kind of institutions, you mentioned already many actually, but what kind of institutions, organization are you looking for in your next future in order to develop your studies and this kind of research? I'm asking this because this would be very interesting all of us, if I may say, especially because of the last point that you touched, which is very important to us in relation to try to build a community of people working on this, people and organizations. So I don't know if you are already have a kind of list of next institutions you are trying to get in touch with, but if so, please tell us, how are you moving on this?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, I would like to continue my studies maybe abroad by applying and to find any PhD position which is related to my interests and studies. As for institutions and like places where you can find relevant information or something that I used also, I was in touch with them during preparation of my project. Apart from the archive of the Tretikov Gallery, there is one institution which is in line with let's say, Centro Conservazione Venaria Reale, because it's the All Russian Art Research and Restoration Center, named after academician Grabar, so that person I named in my project. And it is situated in Moscow. And also there is, as for art history studies, there is the State Institute for Art Studies or the Ministry of Culture of the Russian Federation. And it is the leading Russian center of comprehension research in the field of arts, both Russian and foreign. And as well, I can name my first alma mater, which is now named, just now as a part, it's merged with the Moscow Polytechnic University. And this year they celebrate 155 years from their foundation. And, but it's more about applied arts between art and design, and also about printing area, but they have research in fields of art and design as well. So I would like to know their opinion about my projects, about my application for a PhD, but also, of course, I'm looking forward to apply to, let's say so, more places than only Russia, or more cities than only Rome.
Good, very good. Thanks again, Alexandra. Thanks also for updating us on your plans, and very good to see that you are moving on with your work with many different and relevant organizations and institutions. I invite you all, not just you, of course, but you all. We would be very pleased to receive updates on your progress, on the progress of your work. So feel free and feel invited to share with us your next results. I'm saying this because all of you were somehow underlying the value of belonging to a community. And this exactly was one of the main purposes for realizing this forum for young professionals. And I'd like now, after your presentations, to introduce to a bit of news, a bit of the next steps that the forum is planning to do. And the first one is exactly the building up of practitioners, young professional community. So I'm giving the floor to the YPF team, if I may call you in this way, Young Professional Forum team, meaning Sara Stoisa and Valentina Valcarenghi, who were taking care together with all their colleagues at the center about this forum to introduce what's next about the creation of this community.
Thank you, Alessio. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. And thank you all for being here today. It's a pleasure for us to finally introduce ourselves and to be the spokespersons for this project, which will involve all of us directly. Behind the name Young Professionals Forum, the purpose of this project was already clear. Our forum was created as a place where the younger generations involved in the world of conservation could meet to share and cooperate, to create a large international network that would allow everyone to grow and develop. As a natural consequence, the community project was conceived to be the virtual place where the community of the forum may continue to meet and debate during the year. We have decided to use a LinkedIn group as a tool. LinkedIn because it's the professionals exchange platform for excellence. Through this group, we can virtually meet colleagues from all over the world, sharing experiences, information, and opportunities, waiting for the second edition of the Young Professional Forum, when I really hope we can physically meet. As a young conservator, I strongly believe in this community. I believe in the value of relationships and connections between people. And I hope that together we will take this chance and make it great. Now I leave the floor to my colleague Valentina, who will tell you more about how this project will be organized and how you can become part of it in the coming months. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for the floor, Sara. Alessio, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hope everyone is doing well, safe and healthy. I'm really happy to be here with you virtually today and also to introduce to you our Young Professionals Forum community. As Sara has told you, the community will be organized on LinkedIn, and I want to spend a few words about our community using 4 keywords: research, quality, sharing, and of course, training. The first one is research, and research is the core of every project, as we have seen today and also during the forum last July. Then we have quality, and quality, in my opinion, is simply essential, and we will work very hard to always provide you quality content. Then sharing is the core activity in our community. And last but not least, training. Members of our community will be able to participate in events, webinar, roundtables, coaching sessions, workshops, and much more. In these weeks, we are working to put together a program of meetings and events that we will present in the next few weeks on our social channels. And in our community, you will also find insights created ad hoc for you and reserved only for community members. So to stay up to date and also to discover the opening dates of our community, follow us on our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, LinkedIn. If you are interested in this project, please write us an email or a fast WhatsApp. Then Alessio will show you our email address and WhatsApp number. And in conclusion, as a young community manager, I will have the pleasure to moderate your discussion. And I hope that you join us. I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you. It's a really pleasure for me to welcome all of you into this International Digital Hub, an international digital hub to collect and put together national and international talented young professionals. So thank you for your time and of course for your attention. And I wish you a wonderful weekend. Alessio? Please, the floor is
Thank
yours.
you, Valentina. Thank you, Sara, as well. Let me say that you are really doing a great job with this, and also thank you for recalling the presence of the forum on the social media like Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'm not on Instagram, so I cannot follow you on Instagram, but I invite you all to follow. I'm already following through LinkedIn. Okay, but thanks especially for recalling the appointments that will happen during the next month, because today it's a second appointment after one in July, and today we were able to give voice to the 4 winners. But as I told you, and as you know, there were 24 in total selected works, selected abstracts. So the other 20 will be certainly involved during the next month, thanks to the shaping of this community. I know that all the staff of the center is really motivated on making this happen and investing a lot of resources and a lot of time in this. So that's very good to see. And this was the first news, let's say, about the next future. The second one is the next edition. So let's talk about what will happen in 2021. We have a new call for abstract. You are gonna see, yes, exactly now, the main points, the main information related to the next, so the second edition of the forum, taking place in July, again, 2 days, 1st and 2nd of July 2021. The deadline, take notes of that, because it's pretty relevant. The deadline for the presentation of the abstracts, so for the selection, is in March, 17th of March. And the other news about the next edition is that the 2 days of the forum will be preceded by some days of a practical workshop, not for all, not for huge numbers, but let's see for a selection of participants that that could have the occasion to work and to share experience during this workshop that will take place the days right after the 2 days of the forum. This is also pretty important and a very interesting, a very good occasion to possibly take. So take notes about this. And there is another news which is again very significant, and it is related to having a guest country. So the scientific committee and the organizing committee of the forum is at work to select, to identify a guest country that will have the occasion to take part to the next edition of the forum. Let's keep a bit of suspense about this, but there are several options already under evaluation. So the scientific committee is at work on this. We are approaching the conclusions. I would like to recall and to thank the partners of this first edition: ICOM, ICOM, the International Institute for Conservation, IIC, the University of Torino, of course, and then the sponsor and Compagnia di San Paolo. But I'm also telling you that the network is becoming bigger. So in the next edition, you will probably see other partners and a higher number of very qualified international partners. So in conclusion, let me say that it was again a honor and a pleasure being with you today. I was personally enriched by following the works today and in July. And yes, see you on the community platform, and see you at the next edition in July 2021 of the forum. What else? Merry Christmas and have a happy winter holidays, possibly, and a great new year to all of us. Thank you and goodbye.